Do you want to be rich, drive a fantastic car and have a wonderful lifestyle? Then become a computer games programmer. Yeah, it's called
Yes,
Sausage
Andy,
Makers
I'm
of the
afraid
World
it's not
Unite.
quite that simple. We'll be explaining why the guy who invented this hot new game, Worms, failed to make an impression when he entered it in a magazine competition.
Oh well, our main review this week is Shinobi X on the Saturn.
And our games expert, Violet Berlin, reports on a new technique that's revolutionising the way characters in games are being animated.
But first, look at this. This is Populous on the PC, and it was the first of the God Sims. As one of two gods, you control the fate of your own population. You alter the landscape to encourage your people to build houses, towns and cities. Populous has addictive gameplay and has sold more than 4 million copies worldwide. But the really strange thing about it is that the game was originally rejected by all the big publishers, except one. It wasn't a beat-em-up, it wasn't a platformer, and it wasn't a shoot-em-up. The publishers that rejected it weren't prepared to take a risk with a new game idea.
The first successful snooker sim, Jimmy White's Whirlwind Snooker, is another game that could have ended up languishing in a dustbin if the games publishers had had their way. The game was branded as boring and unsellable by countless games publishers.
It's boring and unsellable.
Finally, back in 1989, one games company saw what all the others had missed and snapped up the idea. They gave the programmer a cheque for over £10,000 on the spot.
Have a check on the spot, my good man.
Unfortunately, that games company was taken over and the new owners weren't quite so keen on the game.
I'm sorry, we're not quite as keen on the game.
But after a lengthy court battle... Too late, Andy. The game was finally sold to another publisher, launched in 1990, and it's still selling today.
Theme Park is a great game. In it, you build and run a leisure park with rides for all ages and keep the customers fed and watered too. You have total control over every detail in the park, right down to how much salt to serve on the chips. The real challenge, though, is to make a profit, as it is for the games companies. Did you know, for example, that only 1 in 5 of games released actually makes a profit? The publishers who first saw Theme Park thought it was going to be one of the other 4. It was originally released as a text-based business simulation by a chap called Peter Molyneux. He wanted to sell it by mail order. He was so convinced he would have a massive response, he even warned his local post office to expect thousands of letters and had his own mailbox, widened. Sadly, he only got 2 responses, and one of those was from his mum. Years later, though, he re-released it as Theme Park, and the rest is history.
And this is Worms, a brand new game that's coming out on nearly every format. The game revolves around teams of heavily armed killer worms. Your team has to outwit and overpower up to 3 other teams over millions of different battlegrounds. Your worms have an impressive arsenal at their disposal. Bazookas, cluster bombs, airstrikes and Uzis, even exploding sheep and banana bombs. The last worm left alive is the winner. And yes, you've guessed it, Worms' potential wasn't spotted by the people who saw it first.
And this is the man behind Worms, programmer Andy Davidson. Welcome to Bad Influence.
Thanks.
Andy slaved away in his bedroom for more than 2 years, working with his Amiga A1200 in Blitz Basic, and came up with this, which is the original version of Worms. What's different between that and the game we're going to see released apart from the title?
Yeah, basically this was the first version of Worms which I got up and running. There's just a lot of things I wanted to do with the game which I didn't get time for.
This was done for a competition for Amiga Format magazine,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
I thought that basically would be the best way of getting it noticed.
They've announced the results of the competition?
Yep.
And you weren't in there?
Worms was amongst them.
So Worms is lurking in a drawer somewhere,
Yeah.
isn't it? Somewhere at Amiga Format magazine. So you knew it was a good game, but it hadn't done very well in the competition. So what did you do to get it noticed?
Well, I knocked another version together and took it along to the ECTS.
Now that's a computer trade show.
Yeah.
And you wandered around with your discs in a box.
Yeah, yeah.
And wondered, did you go to lots of people? Or?
No, so Team 17 was the sort of top of the list because they were sort of on the side of the programmers and they've tried no different ideas before. So I went to them first and put it on, and after 5 minutes said, "Do you want it published?"
I thought that you said, oh, okay then. You really want to. Timur, thanks very much indeed for coming in. Worms is released in November, initially for Amiga, PC and PlayStation, but with other formats to follow soon.
This week's main review is Shinobi X on the Saturn. The game's a new version of the old Mega Drive platformer and stars the original ninja superhero Joe Musashi. You have to defeat the evil Kazuma, who has again kidnapped your unfortunate girlfriend. The game has photorealistic graphics, motion-captured sprites, but is it just a 16-bit game in 32-bit clothing? Here's Lakesh.
For a new console, I'd expect new and exciting ideas, but there's 1,000,001 other games like this on the old machines. It's a standard, flat, left-to-right platformer, in the same style as the Mega Drive version. The gameplay is predictable. You fight your way through a level and you kill a boss. you fight your way through another level and kill a boss again. There are 9 levels, and on the first go I got to level 4, so it's not particularly difficult. The superficial aspects of the game, such as the graphics and the sound, can't match the tired and irritating gameplay.
It really gets the adrenaline pumping. I just couldn't put the game down, but it's very similar to the Mega Drive version.
It looks good and plays okay, but it's not impressive enough to make me buy it.
And the scores for Shinobi X. The boys gave it a rather old hat 3, and the girls a but we still like it 4. Yes, 2, 3, to me, through, oh, no!
Another way to become seriously rich is to become a professional footballer. But if you lack the skills, this is Actua Soccer, a new football sim which claims to be the most realistic ever. The player movement is based on real footballers from Sheffield Wednesday. The goalie's dives come courtesy of Chris Woods. Andy Sinton and Graham High provided the kicks, tackles and other outfield action.
Oops! Several games have used the technique of motion capture to animate characters, but until recently, the equipment necessary was only available in America. Earlier this year, however, Violet Berlin went to visit the only motion capture studio in Europe used exclusively for games.
And here I am at the heart of the European video games industry. Believe it or not, it's at Sheffield in Yorkshire, and this is their new Supertram system. In the early days of video games, most of the things you saw on screen were like this tram. Big blocks of stuff that only moved in one direction, like space rockets, planes and tanks. Now the reason for that was it's fairly easy to work out how something like a block of metal like a tram should move. It obeys simple rules and moves as one big lump. But living creatures, people, animals, even aliens from the planet Zorg don't move in big solid lumps. All their wobbly bits move around independently. That's why the characters in early games tended to move in a very unrealistic way, a bit like this. As games consoles became more powerful and proper animators began to design games for them, we got characters like Aladdin, who looks like he could have stepped out of a Disney movie. Slick, but you'd still never mistake him for a real person. But there is a way to capture all the tiny details about how a person moves and use that information to make an animated character move. It's called motion capture, and the only place in Europe for motion capture studio dedicated to games is here in Sheffield, at the headquarters of computer games company Gremlin. One of their latest projects is a PC game called Normality Inc. It's a massive 3D adventure set in a drab, dull future. The background graphics have already been created. Oh, and the fat guys are marking the positions where proper animated characters will be added later. You play a weird and exciting out-of-work furniture tester. Yes, really. And your task in the game is to brighten up everybody's day by being, well, weird and exciting. And talking of weird and exciting, the next step is to use the motion capture system to animate the characters that you meet in the game. And I'm going to be one of them. The technology in this room cost around £250,000. It uses 6 video cameras to track the movements of the reflective spheres. They use red light because it helps to avoid false reflections.
What this capture is, basically, you start off seated. Yeah?
Right, yeah.
Kind of stand up slowly with power. There's a tape recorder over here. Slap. Slink a bit more.
Aid, the producer, is explaining to me where the various objects are in the scene, and to help my performance, he's put some blocks in the right positions. The tricky thing for me is to act as if I'm really in the scene, which of course only exists as computer graphics.
Sorry, you shouldn't have said that. Give it a good slap.
Okay, are you ready? Let's record.
Now that I'm clear about the action, they're ready to capture my performance. The 6 cameras record my movements from different angles, and the computer ends up with a complete record of my fabulous acting.
Okay, that's excellent.
The next step is to clean up the captured information. As I moved around, some of the spheres got hidden behind my body.
So here, for example, this, what, is that my ankle?
That's right, yeah. What I have to do is to re-identify it as an ankle, and also I have to re-identify that one as a toe, because it's lost track of that one as well.
And so here's the clean version of my action, being used to make the stick figure move on the screen. It's the strangest thing, but somehow I can tell it's me. Once the motion is recorded, you can view it from any angle, and you can use the same data to move any graphic character.
Ah, now that's my bit done. But the programmers at Gremlin have discovered some really strange effects while experimenting with the system.
This is that same male character from Normality Inc. Although it's a male character, the motion was captured from a female model pretending to flounce down a catwalk. Weird.
Motion capture technology is set to revolutionise games which feature human characters. They'll move naturally and look as if they're real people set against a computer backdrop. This is a motion captured version of Violet Berlin, walking as naturally as possible, reporting for Bad Influence.